It was a really interesting bunch of people. And I think one of the things I hadn't realised was how much designing for the private rental market rather than designing for sale really changes things, because you don't just design something which people then buy into. They have to like it and it has to work for them while they're there. And if they don't like it, they'll move in a way that house owners can't. I didn't realise how interested in acoustics a lot of them would be. And they talked about the fact that the standards that exist are really quite low, and that they're almost having a bidding war, designing up to higher and higher acoustic standards. And again, that's an issue especially in private rented spaces, when people are in quite small spaces. They don't want to hear the people in the other apartments. They don't even want to hear the people in their shared apartments. So that was good. And also we talked an awful lot about the communal spaces and this idea of trying to create a sense of community. And to a great extent, of course, you go, well, people are going to want this, people are going to want that, but you don't just put spaces in, you have to manage it, you have to engage with people beyond your building, and you have to be flexible and change if it's not proving to be what people actually want. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, neighbouring developers and pre-existing communities. I mean, I think one of the big points about neighbouring developers was that if you have a huge development, of which King's Cross is the example, you can put in all the community facilities you want. But if you have a master plan and then a number of individual developers building it out, you don't put the swimming pool into every one of them. You know, one of you has the swimming pool, another one has the cinema, and you have to have that kind of coordination. Well, one of them said you don't design a gym with 4 running machines in. That's a complete waste of time. I think part of it is just designing space which you can turn into something else if it doesn't actually work. And yes, you've got to look in the wider context. I mean, if there's a really good gym existing next door, you don't necessarily want to set up in competition with it. And you have to actually interpret what people want. And sometimes people say what they want, because we all want to go to the gym 6 times a week, don't we? And none of us want a shop that's selling chocolate, but actually when you get down to it, it's not exactly like that. Oh, that was quite odd, saying that actually young people, and they were talking about people aged 15 to 25, actually feel safer in a space where there is CCTV, where they feel that if someone comes and tries to do something nasty to them, they're going to be all right. I think there's that. And then, of course, at the slightly older demographic, there is that idea that people want to control absolutely everything from their phone. And the question of how many fewer possessions people have as well. I'm not sure if it's chicken and egg. On the one hand, people are having to live in smaller spaces, so it's more difficult to have possessions. But on the other hand, well, a phone can replace an awful lot of things, but also there is this whole talk about wanting experience rather than possessions. And it will be interesting to see what happens as that cohort grows up. I think that idea of having a space in which you feel good because you can see upwards is really important, because we talk a lot about sustainability, but the most unsustainable thing we can do is actually to build the slums of the future, because we just hit our required space areas, we just satisfy building regulations, but actually it's a pokey and horrible box and nobody wants to be in there. And I think we have to accept that just as the technology that we're using now was almost inconceivable 30 years ago, we can't completely know how we're going to be living and want to live in 30 years' time. And if we design down to the absolute minimum, there really won't be much redundancy into which to put that new way of living. I think they really enjoyed it. I mean, I really liked them all. I didn't know most of them. And I thought, I'm going to have to keep moving this along. And actually, they were talking all the time. And the only time really that I had to come in was thinking, well, let's just address another issue. Let's talk about the inside of apartments as well as communal spaces. But they would have, if they'd had the time and they didn't have the demanding jobs to do, I think they'd have happily talked to each other until 8 o'clock this evening.